Rocky Carter, a wealthy and powerful businessman, stood by the grand window of the Carter estate, gazing down at the perfectly manicured gardens. The morning sunlight streamed through the glass, reflecting off his expensive tailored suit. Everything in Rocky's life was meticulously controlled, from his business empire to the smallest details of his mansion. But today, he was about to execute the most significant plan of his life, one unlike any deal he had ever made. Elsewhere in the mansion, Sienna Blake, the housekeeper who had worked there for over 2 years, was tidying up the living room. She was a smart, independent woman, but life had not been kind to her. Her mother was gravely ill, and her younger brother was in college, with tuition fees piling up. Sienna worked tirelessly to keep her family afloat, but the financial burden weighed heavily on her shoulders. Rocky summoned Sienna to his office. The large room, adorned with expensive artwork, exuded an air of both authority and coldness. Sienna entered, feeling a wave of tension as she met Rocky's piercing gaze. "Sit down," Rocky said, his voice deep and commanding. He wasted no time getting to the point. "I have a proposal for you. I'll pay you $10 million to carry my child through artificial insemination." Sienna's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers curled into fists as a wave of disbelief and anger surged through her. "Are you serious?" she whispered, her voice barely above a tremor, laced with both shock and indignation. "Completely serious," Rocky replied, his expression unwavering. "This is a business transaction. No emotions, no attachments. After the child is born, you will have no parental rights." Sienna felt as though the air had been knocked out of her. She couldn't believe that Rocky could treat the creation of a child as if it were just another deal. She left the office, her mind spinning with a whirlwind of emotions. Sienna left Rocky's office, her mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. His proposal was shocking, almost unreal, but the money, $10 million, could completely transform her life and her family's future. When she returned to her small, cramped apartment, Sienna sat down on the worn-out couch in her living room, staring at the pile of bills stacked on the table. Her mother's hospital expenses were mounting. Her brother's tuition fees remained unpaid, and the bank loan was a constant weight on her shoulders. She felt as though she was drowning in a sea of pressure with no way out. That evening, she confided in her younger brother, Ethan. He was the only person she trusted. When she told him about Rocky's proposal, Ethan was shocked, but couldn't hide his practicality. "Sienna, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That money could pay for Mom's treatment, clear all the debts, and I could finish college without any worries." But for Sienna, this wasn't just about money. "You don't understand, Ethan. This isn't just about finances. This is my child. How can I give up my rights as a mother?" Ethan fell silent, unsure of what to say. Sienna lay awake in bed that night, tossing and turning as her thoughts consumed her. She knew that if she refused, her family would continue to struggle. But if she agreed, she would have to give up a part of herself. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Sienna picked up her phone and sent a text to Rocky. "I agree. I'll sign the contract tomorrow morning." She set the phone down, feeling a mix of relief and fear. She knew this decision would change her life forever. After signing the contract, Sienna moved into the Carter estate. The mansion was not only enormous, but also equipped with every luxury imaginable, from an indoor pool to rooms designed like five-star hotel suites. Yet, for Sienna, the place felt neither comfortable nor liberating. From the very first day, she realized that living here wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a complete loss of personal freedom. Rocky had implemented a series of strict rules to ensure that every aspect of the pregnancy was closely monitored. Rigorous medical checkups. Sienna had to meet with a doctor weekly, and all results were reported directly to Rocky. Controlled diet. A nutritionist meticulously planned every meal to ensure she received the necessary nutrients for the baby. Restricted personal freedom. Sienna was not allowed to leave the mansion without Rocky's explicit permission. She felt trapped, and the lack of autonomy only fueled her growing frustration. Encounters between Sienna and Rocky were often tense. One evening, in the grand dining room, Sienna could no longer hold back her anger. "What do you think I am, a living contract?" she demanded, her eyes blazing with fury. Rocky, his expression cold and detached, replied, "Money solves problems. Emotions only create chaos. His response cut deep, leaving Sienna feeling hurt and dehumanized. But she also began to sense that behind his cold exterior, Rocky was hiding something. Gradually, their daily interactions began to shift. Rocky, who had spent years mastering the art of emotional detachment, found himself unable to look away whenever Sienna was near. He told himself it was nothing, just idle curiosity. But then, when she laughed with the staff, something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. When she winced in pain one afternoon, he clenched his fists, resisting the urge to rush to her side. He was losing control, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he minded. One time, when Sienna slipped and fell lightly in the garden, Rocky rushed over to help her up. Though he tried to maintain his usual stoic demeanor, Sienna could see the worry in his eyes. These small moments made Sienna realize that beneath Rocky's icy facade, there was a man who was slowly beginning to change. But would this change be enough to break down the emotional walls he had built around himself? The good news came one morning when the doctor confirmed that Sienna was successfully pregnant. She sat in the clinic, her hand resting on her stomach, feeling a strange but profound sense of connection. This wasn't just a child, it was a part of her, a life growing inside her. When she returned to the mansion, Rocky was waiting in the living room. He didn't show any emotion or excitement, merely nodding when he heard the news. "Good. This proves everything is going according to plan," he said, his tone as cold as ever. Sienna felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. She had hoped, even just a little, that Rocky might show some emotion, some joy or care. But to him, this was merely a success in his carefully calculated plan. The major conflict arose when Rocky demanded that Sienna attend an important business gala. He wanted to publicly announce to his partners that he was expecting an heir as a way to solidify his position in the financial world. "No way," Sienna protested, her eyes blazing with anger. "I'm not your property to parade around." For the first time, Rocky lost control of his emotions. "Don't you understand? This isn't about you. This is about the future of the child and my company." They argued fiercely. Sienna confronted him about his fear of emotions and connection. "How afraid are you of feelings that you have to turn everything into a transaction? Have you ever thought about what this child will need beyond money?" Rocky, after a moment of silence, revealed a part of his past. He spoke about his painful childhood, growing up in a broken home. His parents divorced when he was young, and his father, a man obsessed with his career, abandoned the family to chase success. Rocky had learned not to trust emotions, believing they only brought pain and loss. But his explanation did little to ease Sienna's anger. She felt like nothing more than a tool in his plan, and she couldn't bear it any longer. "I can't live like this," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm leaving." The moment the front door clicked shut, silence swallowed the mansion whole. Rocky stood frozen, his hands clenched at his sides. He had spent his entire life perfecting the art of control, yet he couldn't stop her from leaving. He walked into her now empty room. Her scent still lingered in the air. The chair she used to sit in, the book she had left open on the nightstand, everything screamed of her presence. Yet she was gone. For the first time in years, Rocky felt something claw at his chest. Regret. Sienna's departure left a gaping void in the Carter estate. Rocky, who had always prided himself on his ability to control every aspect of his life, now felt adrift. But he didn't have much time to dwell on it, as a major crisis erupted. Chaos descended upon Carter Holdings like a storm without warning. Headlines screamed accusations. Investors pulled out. The board whispered in hushed tones about replacing him. For the first time, Rocky felt something unfamiliar: helplessness. His empire, the one thing he had built with precision and control, was slipping through his fingers like sand. Competitors seized the opportunity to attack, and the board began pressuring him to step down as CEO. For the first time in his life, Rocky felt completely out of control. He had always relied on money and power to solve problems, but this time, they weren't enough to save him. Amid the chaos, Sienna unexpectedly returned. Though no longer bound by the contract, she decided to help Rocky. "I'm not doing this for you," she said firmly. "I'm doing this for the child." Together, they worked to gather evidence to prove that Rocky had no involvement in the information leak. During this process, Rocky began to rely on Sienna, not just for her intelligence and determination, but because she was the only person who hadn't abandoned him in his darkest hour. Rocky had spent nights lying awake, trying to convince himself it was nothing, just gratitude, just a lingering habit of her presence. But when she laughed with the staff, his chest ached. When she winced in discomfort, his hands twitched, wanting to comfort her. It wasn't until one night, watching her exhausted yet determined, that the truth slammed into him like a freight train. He wasn't afraid of losing the company. He was afraid of losing her. The words slipped out before he could stop them, raw and unfiltered. "I was wrong. I thought money could fix everything, but I was wrong. I'm more afraid of losing you than losing this company." Sienna looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. For the first time, she saw Rocky lower his guard and admit his true fears. That moment marked a turning point in their relationship. Rocky was no longer the cold, calculating man she had once known. He was beginning to change, not just for Sienna, but for himself. After Sienna decided to return and help Rocky, they began working together to prove his innocence in the business scandal. This wasn't just a legal battle. It became an emotional journey where both of them started to discover deeper feelings for each other. They spent countless hours in Rocky's office, poring over documents, reviewing emails, and searching for evidence to clear his name. Sienna, with her intelligence and determination, helped Rocky identify flaws in the accusations against him. One night, as they worked late, Sienna looked up and caught Rocky staring at her. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, slightly flustered. Rocky smiled, a rare, genuine smile she had never seen before. "I was just thinking, I've never met anyone like you. You don't have to be here, but you are." Sienna felt her heart skip a beat. "I'm doing this for the baby," she replied, but her voice lacked the conviction it once had. In the days that followed, Rocky began to show a different side of himself. He was no longer the cold, commanding man she had known. He started to care for Sienna in small but meaningful ways, asking about her health, even making her tea when she looked tired. One afternoon, while Sienna was working in the garden, she accidentally knocked over a potted plant. Instead of calling a staff member to clean it up, Rocky stepped in to help her himself. "You don't have to do that," she said, surprised. "Maybe I want to," he replied, his gaze softer than she had ever seen. Rocky began to open up more about himself. He shared the pressures he had faced growing up, how his father had always prioritized his career over family, and how that had shaped him into the cold, detached man he had become. "But you're different," he said one evening as they sat by the fireplace. "You make me want to believe there's more to life than money." Sienna was speechless. She didn't know how to respond, but she could feel the sincerity in his words. As they worked together, Sienna also began to see Rocky in a new light. He wasn't the emotionless man she had once thought. Beneath his cold exterior was a lonely man, afraid of being hurt, but yearning for love. One evening, after they had made significant progress in gathering evidence, Sienna said unexpectedly, "You're not what I thought you were." Rocky looked at her, intrigued. "And what did you think I was?" "At first I thought you were just a selfish man who only cared about money, but now I see you're just human and you have your own pain." Rocky didn't say anything, but his gaze softened. In that moment, they both felt a deeper connection. When they finally found the evidence to prove Rocky's innocence, he organized a small dinner to thank Sienna. Under the soft glow of candlelight, Rocky looked at her and said, "I'm not just grateful to you for helping me through this. I'm grateful to you for being here, for changing me." Sienna felt her heart stir. She knew that, despite her efforts to keep her distance, she had started to fall for this man. Time passed, and the business scandal was resolved, with Rocky fully exonerated. But more importantly, the relationship between him and Sienna had changed forever. From two strangers bound by a contract, they had found each other in the most difficult moments, and now they were no longer tied by obligation, but by something far deeper. As Sienna entered the final stages of her pregnancy, Rocky stayed by her side, caring for her every step of the way. He was no longer the cold, detached man he once was. He had learned to care, to love, and to put others before himself. On the day Sienna went into labor, Rocky was with her throughout the entire process. In the delivery room, he held her hand tightly, his eyes filled with worry and love. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered. "I'm here. I'll always be here." When the first cries of their baby filled the room, Rocky felt his entire world shift. He looked at the tiny life placed in his arms, a fragile being that carried all the meaning of love and hope. "Hello, Noah," he said, his voice breaking. For the first time, Sienna saw Rocky cry. His tears weren't from pain or loss, but from pure, unfiltered joy, a happiness he had never known before. After Sienna recovered, Rocky led her to the garden behind the mansion, where he had prepared a surprise. Under the soft glow of the setting sun, a small table was set with flowers and candles. "I've built skyscrapers, bought companies, controlled entire markets," Rocky whispered, taking her hands in his. "But none of it compares to what you've given me. You made me see beyond contracts and numbers. You made me feel, and now, I don't want a life without you." He dropped to one knee, his voice raw. "Sienna, let me spend the rest of my life proving that I love you." Sienna looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "Rocky, you're not the man I thought you were. You've become someone I can trust, someone I can love." Rocky knelt down, taking her hand in his. "I don't want to just be Noah's father. I want to be your man, your family. Sienna, will you give me the chance to do that?" Sienna broke into tears, nodding. "Yes, Rocky, yes." They embraced, and Rocky gently picked up Noah, gazing at the baby with pride and love. This wasn't just a family born out of a contract. It was a family built on love, forgiveness, and hope.